I want to welcome everybody to the daily cheat sheet. I normally don't give the day, but it is September 11th, following the horrific tragedies of September 10th, obviously with the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And this is one of those, I mean, you still don't know what to say, but I will say one thing to start. Charlie, I guess, was writing a book about why the Sabbath was so important for Jews. And there's something about the mourning period. None of us are really observant, and we're observant in our own ways, but there's something very special about the 7 days that we mourn after somebody dies. And I don't think enough of us sometimes realize that people need to mourn. And I often think of September 11th and how we've treated it in our country. And I've often said and written that we should, it should be a day of atonement. It should be a day in America where we really remember this should be a federal holiday. This should be, I don't mean holiday in the sense of holiday, like don't look at Yom Kippur as a holiday. It's not exactly the most fun time, as we guys know. And I just think we need that. It's okay to mourn for people. It's okay to take time. It's okay to remember. And I think that's what people should do. I think people should take the next week. It doesn't mean you don't. It just means it's important to take time going.
Yeah, there's the initial reaction to something, and then there's the reaction that settles in when you actually have time to focus inward, to feel the grief, to honor the loss, to sit with people that you love, to talk, to memorialize the loved one, if it is a loved one that you've lost, to get the emotional and spiritual support that you need, all of that. For those of you who are not in the Jewish faith, we do a thing called sitting Shiva. Shiva literally comes from the word Sheva, which means seven, and it's deliberate. It's a formal week-long mourning period, usually after a close relative's burial. And you stay home, and there's all sorts of rituals you observe, and the idea is to do as little as possible. No work, no grooming, no indulgences. There are even things that you do so that you are uncomfortable. You sit on lower chairs or even sit on the floor. You don't wear leather shoes. You cover the mirrors. You don't bathe. You don't shave. The idea is to really feel everything. And I think it's unbelievably important. I've been a part of several Shivas, and both as the person mourning and as the person supporting those who are mourning. And there's nothing quite like having friends and family around you. It's something you do not do alone. And I think it's unbelievably important to feel your feelings. I know it sounds like a cliche and it almost sounds like a greeting card, but so many people shove this stuff down and just try to soldier on. And we just don't believe in that in the Jewish faith. And I think more and more people in other faiths, Charlie certainly understood this, which is why he was writing that book, are coming around to it.
And man, I bring this up though, just especially what he just said. 9/11 has sadly become, I don't want to use the word cliche, but it's like, oh, let's just take a moment. I was walking my dog and I heard the school making an announcement of this is what happened. In 2000, this is what happened. And the school should take the day. Every school in America should take the day and literally the teachings of what happened that day and who died and name the names. And everybody that died that day should get, except for the people that obviously committed the murder, the murderers. And I think that we lose value when we don't do things like that.
There's a lot going on here. I mean, the way you guys are speaking about it, anyone listening would think that the nation is in mourning. And that's far from the truth, both for 9/11 and for Charlie Kirk. You're seeing two halves of the nation. There's one half that is in shock. There was a man who, his motto was prove me wrong. He would set up these debates on college campuses, and he would usher to the front the people that disagreed with him the most, and he'd say, have a seat, and he would respectfully debate. And if the opponent made a good point, he would give them credit for it. That is the foundation of this democracy. This is what we're about. We're about fleshing out ideas and let people understand for themselves and then figure out which one is the better idea. What we're seeing from the left is Matthew Dowd, MSNBC guy, came out and said, oh, it was probably a Charlie Kirk fan who shot him in celebration because, they're all crazy with guns. These people are vile. I saw people on the left singing songs. We got
He was
Charlie.
fired. He was fired pretty soon, but
That whole network needs to be taken off the air. Anybody who watches that network
I was
is
going to get into that, by the way.
absolutely
I was
insane.
going to get into that because we've had this discussion before. I obviously think Katie Tur, who was hosting the show at the time, needs to be fired. Listen, you're completely right. The rhetoric that is coming from them. Listen, I mean, I was trying to rack my brain, and I didn't want to use Google to do this. I was trying to rack my brain of the last time we witnessed in America a right violence against the mass. And the only thing I could come up with was obviously the Oklahoma City bombing.
Oklahoma City, the Charlottesville guy who drove through a crowd, wasn't he a right guy? But for the most part, I mean, you're talking about 7 of the last school shootings was from people on the left. The Trump 2 assassinations was from lunatics on the left. Charlie Kirk assassination on the left. Scalia, the congressman, I believe it was, at the Congress baseball game, that shooting that went down, that was the left. The left has a violence problem, but they keep on saying that it's the right that has the problem. So just like when we talk about crime statistics, when black males are the most dangerous sector of our population, unfortunately, that is just the numbers bear that out. Same thing here. The radical left is the most dangerous part of our population. And what these leaders on the left claim is that white supremacy somehow is the most dangerous thing when that doesn't even exist anymore in this nation. I'm going to say that. It doesn't exist. There is no supremacy. You may have a couple of white skinhead lunatics, but there is no supremacy movement. So this entire narrative that they've been pushing for the last few years, stating that everyone on the right is a Nazi and Trump is a fascist, where do you think it's going to lead? This is where it leads to.
Well, I've been
And then they come out and they give these platitudes on the day that a guy like Charlie, who was just a dad of 2 beautiful children, a husband, a guy who was willing to sit down and debate anybody, and he gets killed. And the attitude on the left is singing songs about we got Charlie in the neck. I mean, it is vile. It is disgusting. So you know how the Biden administration went after the J6ers and the Moms for Liberty and the Christian parents who were protesting in their schools against all the sexual indoctrination their kids were getting? They arrested them in mass. There was a mass arrest that went on, a giant apparatus from the FBI taking these people down. The right needs to do the same thing, but these people really are the lunatics. You're seeing people making lists of who's next online. They're calling it out between Elon Musk and Ben Shapiro and Trump and
JD Vance.
Go down the list. JD Vance. They want to get them all.
The list goes on, and you're raising a bigger point. I was going to get into. I keep on hearing people saying American. The reason I bring this up is because Time Magazine has a cover about political violence, and I am absolutely diametrically opposed to this word of political violence because you're putting it all. It's the same thing when they say you don't want Jewish hate and no Islamic hate, right? You're seeing fake platitudes, obviously, and fake condemnation, because when you say political violence has to stop, that political violence is only coming from one party right now. And it has been coming from that party for a long time. I said before the Trump assassination attempt, I said, and a lot of people said it, it's the next evolution. It's literally, you could see it coming. What happens when you prosecute? That doesn't work. When you impeach, that doesn't work. When you witch hunt, and that doesn't work. You are literally setting a fire and setting a flame for only the next logical step. And when you read people online and you hear people in the media just stoking the flames, I mean, forget about the Nazi stuff and forget about all that stuff. Just talking about just everything they say, everything, the censoring that went on college campuses and them being okay with it. When you stop allowing free speech on college campuses and this brilliant person comes in and speaks about it in such an eloquent way and is open to discourse, you're fanning the flames. You are guilty.
I think that's absolutely right. And I think that, okay, we're going to talk about the media again. I'm exhausted doing it, but I think this is a function of them trying to control a narrative, right? If someone is saying political violence, it's because they are trying to control what the right are doing. Because when the left does things that as far as the definitional nature of it or political violence, they don't use that word. When in the summer of love, right, and cities are burning and police precincts are under siege and the businesses are being looted and people are being shot in the street, that's not political violence, right? That's righteous, or it's mostly peaceful, or there's a thousand. Even when they were calling it out, they were saying, that these people are really upset because, and they would give reasons, but it would never be this political violence is not okay. Same thing that happens when there are attacks on pro-life centers or on churches or on conservative speakers. It's all the crickets. It's the same kind of thing. They talk about it as they didn't want their version of hate to be spoken here. It's always justified. When assassinations, you mentioned the Trump thing. What about when they went to kill Justice Kavanaugh? Same kind of thing. They were like, oh, they were going to take away women's rights. And so it's always this thing, but when it's on the right, it's always blown up into political violence. It's a branding iron that they immediately just slap on the buttocks of every right-wing action that's done. And it's just a way of controlling the narrative. It's a way of saying this group is okay and this group is not. So I think you're right. These are buzzwords that are meaningless. We talked about it yesterday. We were talking about Charlie. We were kind of honoring his legacy. And we were talking about the fact that this term political violence is going to be weaponized in a way to almost like they did with Trump, but it's not only absolve, it's to vilify the victim, right? So they did the same thing with Trump when he was shot. Well, his rhetoric caused, like what Mend was saying a moment ago, but people online saying, well, he said a bunch of hateful stuff, so then hate came back around like a boomerang. It's like, what, you are using this term in order to use it as a weapon, as a cudgel. And that's where it becomes just hypocrisy.
Amanda, before you guys, I just want to say it's very interesting because I brought this up before. We really have to start using the term pre-Trump and after Trump. And it really is important because we can't get past what's happened since Trump got down that escalator, came down that escalator. We can't. So when you look at the Parkland shootings and you look at, whether it was Sandy Hook, it was never politics. It was, it was psychopaths with zero political agenda. Since 2015, the political agenda from Steve Scalise to obviously Trump to obviously yesterday with Charlie Kirk, this is really unprecedented in a long time. I mean, this is unprecedented since the 1960s. And we have to be honest and call it out what it is. This has literally occurred in the last 10 years.
Elon Musk pointed something out the other day, which was the New York Times, the way they frame black on white killings, where they bold the black and they lowercase the white.
Capitalize. You mean capitalize?
Yeah, they capitalize. Yeah. So you're seeing basically it's all part of the same narrative. And Dr. Seth sent me something which was just the long, slow erosion of our trust in everything. And you're seeing people go into their own silos, which then they go into these echo chambers, and it just makes them feel helpless. Apathy sets in and they are helpless on both sides of the aisle. But here you had a guy who exemplified what it is to be an American. And that was dialogue and debate, willing to talk to anybody. And the left couldn't take that, and they cut him down. What's really scary about this is that Charlie was changing thousands of kids' minds, opening their eyes just based on common sense. His arguments weren't rooted in biblical scripture or anything like that. His arguments were all rooted in common sense. And you saw a massive shift in the youth, especially. I mean, that guy connected. And cutting him down wasn't just them trying to silence one guy. They were trying to change this wave, this thing that was happening. And it looks like the person that is the prime suspect right now, they released an image of him, and on his gun and on his bullets, he had crazy trans stuff written. They found the gun, and they're hopefully going to apprehend this kid. But the damage...
By the way, this speaks to Judah's point, is that once upon a time, it was lone wolves. It was unhinged people. It was mentally ill people. There was no agendas. Hardly there were manifestos. It was just chaos, random violence. As terrible as it was, it always looked ugly, tragic, and isolated. And now, since Trump, you're right. I never thought about it until you said it. Everything's got a political label. And part of that is if you are going to vilify, as the mass media, the mainstream media does, if you are going to vilify not just Trump, but an entire group of people. Trump and all the people who follow Trump and all the people who agree with MAGA or whatever it is that they're constantly pushing into our eyeballs. That whole group is problematic. Joe Biden gave a speech in front of a blood red background talking about how half the country basically are extremists and need to be stopped. If that's the message being given, why would it not result in political
Right. That
violence?
is the
and not
next
just
logical evolution of that type of speech. And
yes.
I don't care what people say, words do have consequences. So to Men's point that he brought up before, my first reaction, and I was talking with Golan before we did yesterday's show, and I did not bring it up, I don't think, was I wanted to cut the cord. I think at that moment, I wanted Trump to pull NBC's license, to literally pull the plug off air. That they allowed that publicly traded company allowed a division of their company to come out and have Katie Tur and have Matthew Dowd and have all these people. And remember, a lot of people don't realize this. Matthew Dowd was a former Republican, worked for Bush. And so
he's an absolute idiot to make those kinds of statements.
It's worse than an idiot, Mend. It's worse than an idiot.
He's an ideological idiot.
It's a sickness.
And more to your point. So you were saying that there's a before Trump and after Trump. Yes. But what we're seeing is culpability from the media. And this is what we were just getting at with the MSNBC stuff, is these people get out there and they say things that are absolutely dangerous. You don't see people on the right calling everyone on the left fascist, Nazi, war criminals that need to be shot on the street. But you do see people on the left like Maxine Waters screaming. You see them in a restaurant, you get up in their face. You got to fight. Like that type of stuff. That's the rhetoric that leads to this stuff. And you're hearing it from the lefties again and again. They keep on talking about Trump is a fascist Nazi. If he was Nazi, if he's Hitler, then it's absolutely okay to kill him. That's where this goes. If you think that you could take out Hitler, and what they did was what I was talking about before with the trajectory of what Charlie Kirk had accomplished and where he was going. Charlie Kirk was a future president of the United States. Charlie Kirk was on track to change the hearts and minds of our youth. He did it so successfully on such a large scale. And to cut him down at just 31 years old is absolutely unconscionable. But more than that, he's irreplaceable. They've changed the trajectory. They've changed the course of history by killing Charlie. And I'm not being hyperbolic. I really mean this.
I think you're not being hyperbolic. And I think we are going to feel the ramifications of that seismic shift. And I don't know in what way yet, and I don't know how it's going to manifest, but I really believe that I don't mean just America. I mean, this is a worldwide event that changes the way people interact with one another, changes the way politics works. It may get worse before it gets better. It may become something that's healing. I'm seeing, I deal in a lot of circles, as you guys know, both on both sides of the aisle and pretty much in the entire spectrum in between. And I am seeing certain people online, obviously, who are clearly mentally ill, celebrating the death of a 31-year-old husband and father.
From now on, let's stop using that word. It's another word like we have to take out. What?
Which
mentally
word?
Ill?
Mentally ill. Because it's a disrespect to people.
Well, I'm trying not to curse. But also, no, I think it is a mental illness. I think it is. I think there is a.
It is, but we actually treat them like peers.
Biologically, emotionally wrong with you in order to celebrate the death of a human being, regardless of if you disagree with their opinion.
Let me make a stretch, and I'll say, just like Nazi Germany, they convinced a lot of well-intentioned, seemed like, good Germans to join the Nazi party and get on board with that stuff because they were indoctrinated. They were fed a constant stream of propaganda. On the left in this country, we're seeing something similar where they are being fed a constant stream of indoctrination that there's a Nazi leading the country and everyone who supports him is a Nazi supporter. And therefore, they don't say this, but therefore deserves to be eliminated. How many left-leaning influencers were assassinated in the last 20 years? Zero.
Obviously zero. And none of us are ever, and none of us in our right minds are ever going to call for it. And I think the best point somebody made last night, it was either the rabbi from Beverly Hills, I think it was Rabbi Mentz from Beverly Hills, however you pronounce it, the Chabad rabbi. Mentz. He said, you notice you're not seeing riots tonight. You're seeing people go to church.
Well, this is
And I thought,
the thought I didn't get to finish because of the mentally ill detour. But by the way, real quick, two things. One, I want to just respond to that. I think I hadn't thought of it until you said it. Once you mentioned the Nazis, which is a thing that, as you guys know, I study. You're absolutely right. Scale makes mental illness theory impossible. So the banality of evil kind of trumps mental illness. You're right. I shouldn't be saying mentally ill. These people are we're ideologically radicalized, socially conditioned, all of that. Willing participants, would be willing participants of genocide. They cheer on murders, all the rest. You're right. I shouldn't say mentally ill. I will take that out of my lexicon. But the point of what I was saying was, I'm seeing people that are not on those extremes, people on the left, even really like hardcore on the left, and people on the right, and they're both saying, oh my God, this is the moment I realize something is wrong. Like up until now, I've been able to turn a blind eye to it. But this is the moment when a lot of people on both sides are saying, this is the moment for calm and dialogue. It's what Charlie would have wanted. And even the people who disagreed with him, I'm getting a lot of those people too. People who used to vehemently go after him ideologically, not, wouldn't take a shot at him or something like that or celebrate it, are realizing this is that moment. And just like this will be hyperbolic, I get it. I know, man, you weren't being, I'm going to be. Much like when Jesus died and everybody realized, oh my God, we have to do something new. It feels like one of those seismic moments that is historical in how it's going to affect everything that happens in our lives. That's all I was trying to get at.
I was having a conversation with and we always, especially in the conservative movement, call it the silent majority, right? Why are we the silent majority? Because many people are scared of losing their livelihoods. They're scared of losing their social status by being vocal conservatives. And you can't be scared of those things anymore. You have to be willing to risk losing your livelihoods. Yesterday, a man lost his life for America. The least people could do is risk losing a few dollars. And everybody should be posting on their X accounts or whatever social media accounts they are in loving memory of Charlie Kirk. I don't care what industry you're in. That's how you silence these psychos. That's how you bring out these evil people, is by not being silent anymore. That's the lesson that needs to be learned. No other lesson. We cannot be silent to this. If you're scared you're going to lose a job, the job wasn't meant to be. What's more important, saving our society or that next job or that relationship or whatever it is? If somebody can't respect that you want to mourn somebody like Charlie Kirk, they're the evil one, not you. They're the ones that will lose work.
I think, do we remember when the Charlie Hebdo thing happened in 2015 in France?
Of course.
And everybody was putting up, Je suis Charlie, right? I am Charlie, because the idea was solidarity, whether you agreed with what they did or didn't agree with what they did or ideologically. On the other side, the idea was we are all people who should not put up with this anymore. To me, this moment, the fact that it happens to be the same name just gives me chills. But the idea, and this is something one of our former guests, Guy Goldstein, and I have been talking about offline, is the idea of an I Am Charlie campaign of saying you may disagree with them, but murder is unacceptable. And we all should be saying that. And it's about defending the right to speak, defending conversation, defending civil dialogue, and moral clarity. It's not about do you like him or not. Are we okay with assassination as a response to speech? And we all, no matter what your politics are, all of us should be saying, I am Charlie today.
Great point. Let me know if I could help out in that. That's a fantastic one.
I sort of brought it up too.
Thank you, Judah. Thank you, Judah.
No. I'm just saying this in the sense that, the two of you, so just so you know, Golan's a very successful movie producer. He has a show coming out very soon. He's extremely successful, and he has big meetings with his whole background of what his background is during the show. And Men's an extremely successful businessman, one of the most prominent, I say this easily, one of the best SEO people in the United States.
Crypto bro. I'm going with that one now.
Crypto bro. And also just, there's no charitable organization that he doesn't get involved with or try to start. And the two of you have risked, I don't even hate using the word risk, are just honest people and are honest brokers. So when you talk, it should carry more weight because you're on the front lines of anybody that could lose those things. So when we call out people to say it's put up or shut up time, we've put up and we haven't shut up. So to the people out there, don't be scared. Don't be scared. And I say this to all our friends. We can't be, after October 7th, all of us were in these private, right, in Hollywood or whatever, these private WhatsApp chat groups because they were scared of saying out loud their thoughts. That's the most insane effing thing in the world. That people were beaten into submission, that after October 7th, they couldn't come out loud and say, evil exists in this world. And it's insane. There should be no private WhatsApp chat groups about this. There should be no private WhatsApp chat groups after there's an absolute slaughter of Jews. That's insanity, and I feel bad at this point that I even belong to them because this should never have been private. Everybody should have been out loud screaming. It's not the job for a couple of us to scream for the job of millions. It's the job of millions to scream out for their own lives and their own children. I don't have children. I am screaming out to protect your children. And it's time. And man, it's that time for people. It's that time. If any lesson is learned from this, it's to speak from your heart out loud, no matter the cost. Because if we don't, this is going to happen again, and this vicious cycle will not stop. Unless everybody says, Katie Tur, you need to be fired. If everybody doesn't scream at every single person that's vile online, this won't stop.
Forget about that. I mean, CNN, MSNBC, the Mental Institution, and a lot of other left-leaning outlets immediately came out, even BBC. I mean, they all came out and they insinuated that Charlie somehow brought this on himself. That Charlie, they'll dig up a statement that Charlie made on Second Amendment rights and say he was for guns, or they call him they don't just say that he was an influential person. They go polarizing,
MAGA
influencer.
MAGA,
influencer, right. MAGA, hard right. Like, what are you talking about? This guy exemplified what it was to be an American. This guy sat down with his political opponents and used dialogue to hash things out. That is what we're about. Yet these outlets, the day he got shot, before he was even dead, were out there making those types of statements. So yeah, I applaud what you're saying, Judah, that everybody needs to come out and say something. But more than that, the Justice Department needs to do an absolute witch hunt, catching all of these people that are posting online, making lists of targets of who's next, arresting these people for inciting violence. Not
Marco Rubio
issues.
actually came out, just so you know, and said about a few hours ago that anybody that is a foreigner that is celebrating Charlie Kirk's death will be deported.
Great. That's great. And what about the domestic people? I'm talking about people that live here. I was talking to a buddy of mine, Ron, the other night, and last night, we were talking about what needs to be done with the radical Americans. I'm not talking about the illegal immigrants. We already know they need to be deported and fix our census and fix representation in Congress. I'm talking about Americans. President Trump should get up there and offer $5,000 or $10,000 to any American who hates America that wants to renounce their citizenship. You renounce your citizenship, you get $10,000, and we put you on a plane to Zimbabwe or wherever the hell you want to go, and you are out. You're done. You could protest and complain over there. Send them to Russia. Russia would love to have them. They need more people for the front lines. Send them anywhere. But there should be an absolute program for that. But more than that, what I'm talking about is there is so much content online of people absolutely calling for violence against Americans, violence against our political...
Or celebrating the violence that's already been done. And
celebrating violence is a little less. They should be on a watch list, but the ones that are calling for violence, and there's a lot of them out there,
absolutely.
You throw them in jail. You lock them up for a long time. And they need to go after all the woke people that were in the Justice Department that aided and abetted the Biden and Obama administrations in locking up all the J6ers and everybody else and take them down. The Justice Department, the system, the systemic failures and the systemic rot in that system needs to be dismantled. So you can't just do it by placing somebody at the top named Kash Patel, who's great. He's phenomenal, or Pam Bondi. Those are just top figures. throughout the system, there was rot, and they need to purge that rot.
I've been saying that for a long time. And listen, we have cases of this, obviously, with the New York City Police Department. And we had this, I believe, with the CIA. There was the Church Commission and there was the Knapp Commission. It's that same feeling after 9/11 as we're on 9/11 of pure anger and pure hatred. Now, on those days afterwards, we made a lot of mistakes as a government. And I'm not referring, we made a lot of mistakes, especially with the wiretapping and a lot of things. And as much as I agree with Mend, I agree with him 100%. We can't make the same mistakes because the left will eventually use it when they get back into power. We have to correct the system, but we can't overcorrect. So to the people that are saying you're next, arrest those people. I don't think that's too crazy to say.
Well, okay, so let me touch on this, because maybe this will sound nuts, but I think we need to review the First Amendment. I think that there is something wrong with the way it currently stands, because I'm not saying I want all speech to not be protected, because obviously free speech is one of the major cornerstones of the United States. Again, I don't have every step of this, but to me, I know that there was a court case that I studied years ago, Brandenburg versus Ohio. I don't remember the year. But in that court case, it said something to the effect of, basically, it's likely to incite or produce an action versus directing or inciting or producing an action, right? The idea of, I'm trying to think of an example. Somebody should shoot Judah tomorrow is legal, is protected speech under the First Amendment. But if I say tomorrow at 9 p.m., you should shoot Judah, and I'm giving specifics, then it becomes a prosecutable threat. I think we need to go further, especially with the rise of social media and the rise of people being able to spread this sort of thing so easily. And I don't know if you guys agree with me on this. Again, it's a major thing.
We've had this. I don't not disagree with you. I think this is the thought that is going through everybody's head right now. I think you're speaking what a lot of people are thinking, but they don't want to say it out loud. We truly have to mend. We truly have to start thinking. We all know the fire in the movie theater type thing. There are a lot of people that are screaming this. There are a lot of people that are being extremely insightful, more than insightful. I mean, if you're saying you're next, that's a death threat. That's a death threat. Okay, saying anybody go on is next, to me, death threat. I don't think that's that really in the social media world, a statement like that you're next gets amplified. So it's different than the schmuck that says you're next in 20 years ago or 30 years ago.
And again, we're talking about the nuance of protected speech, because if you say, and we've got, God forbid, but if Ben Shapiro should be next, that is protected speech. But if you say, I'm going to make Ben Shapiro next, or meet me tomorrow at 9 and we'll make Ben Shapiro next, or I bought a gun, Ben Shapiro's next, watch me, all of those things are now credible threats or direct threats.
I think if you say it on social media, 100%, you should be arrested for that.
And this is what I'm saying. I think we need to amend this, just like we need to amend. Look, I used to sign contracts as a producer that said, as any time this videotape exists, and then it went streaming and they were like, ha, 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 we're not doing videotape anymore. I got a loophole. Now we have to say any media that might exist at any time in the future on any planet, because we realized, oh my God, we didn't realize this was going to grow. We had to change it because there was new technology. This social media is the fastest way to radicalize people. It is the fastest way to gather a group of psychopaths together. It is the fastest way to radicalize somebody to actually go commit a crime. We've seen it, right? And so now that we have this delivery system that allows for this to happen so quickly, and I've talked to you guys about this before, the Chinese, when they were on TikTok, now this is something I'll say allegedly. We know there is a department within the Chinese government that operates as TikTok masters. It's their department of manipulation. And they say, how long will it take to get these effing idiots on TikTok to worship bin Laden? And they had all these theories, right? This came from, I can't name names. It came from inside government sources. How long will it take? The assumption that it would take several months, that it would be a slow build, and eventually they would be able to see cracks in the armor. 48 hours later, all these influencers were like, turns out bin Laden was right, worship bin Laden. It's like, this is the system we have now. How are we not amending the laws to meet the moment?
Which brings us back to, why isn't TikTok banned?
Well,
TikTok is
sure.
a Chinese psyop. They need to ban TikTok.
But it's
as
just
simple
one.
as that.
I saw right now on Facebook. Facebook is like where old people go. I saw, okay, now that this one's out of the way, and then they made a list of the next people, and it was all the people, it was the Prager and Ben Shapiro. It was like all the people that they wish they could do this to, but they wrote it in a way like, I hope Ben Shapiro's next, which is legal speech. The idea that that's legal speech, that you shouldn't be able to roll up to somebody's house and say, you made, as far as I'm concerned, a credible threat against someone's life, because you may have said it in this couched way, but someone else is going to read it and go, aha, that's incitement. I'm sorry. It should be incitement.
I think that there's a silver lining to this, and the silver lining is that because of social media, you're able to see a lot more people express their actual views, which should then put them under scrutiny by the FBI. I don't know if you arrest them, but you definitely put them under monitoring. You say this person is more likely to commit political violence. This person is more likely to be committing racial violence because they're an extreme lefty and racist and a warmonger. But there are ways to do that without actually changing our free speech laws, and they're not employing it. They're not employing it to the point that the previous administration employed the FBI on their behalf. And I'm not talking about on their behalf. I'm talking about employing it on behalf of the American people. This is an America issue. This is not a party issue. The other side, when Biden was in, that was all based on ideological view and their parties, touting the party line. Here, it's just, this is America. This is America. If you're on the right or the left and you have an opinion, by all means, get up there and debate it. But you cannot resort to political violence, and you cannot resort to inciting political violence. And that's what these people are doing.
But again, it's lefty political violence. But I want to go to you quickly, Franz, because we look at the Middle East a lot, and we look at the educational system. It's sort of an oxymoron. But these children, these people, these kids have been raised since they're whatever, in every textbook they have, to want to kill the infidel. And when you look at the radicalization that is being, you're seeing teachers, right, teaching this radicalization in their classrooms. Those teachers need to be automatically fired. I don't care if that means going against the teachers union or breaking apart the teachers union. You can't have kids in school celebrating this, which was actually occurring. You cannot
in the
have
U.S. You're talking about here in the U.S. because in Gaza, of course, they do that.
He's comparing, and I think it's an apt comparison, UNRWA, UN-sponsored Hamas textbooks, where every kid is taught that being a martyr is the greatest thing, kill the Jews, it's a wonderful thing. So we think, okay, well, in that backward third world, Middle Ages, Rock Ages culture, okay, fine, those people, they all need to be, whatever. But in America right now, half those comments I'm talking about, people saying this one should be next, there was a video I watched of a guy laughing about Charlie and saying, making fun of it and pretending to care, but not really care. And it turns out he was a teacher. These people are teaching our children, shaping the future through our children.
Yeah, you're seeing it here, and you're also seeing it. I was just looking for it in Canada. I mean, in Canada, it's even way worse. So here we have the teachers union, which completely buys into all of this radical narrative. And it's funny because it's run by Randi Weingarten, the most despicable human being in America. She's the one who locked down the schools, and now she's claiming she didn't. But there are certain districts where they are erasing Jews, they are erasing Israel, they are rewriting history, they are demonizing America, they are putting up pride flags in the room, not the American flags in the room, Black Lives Matter above all, like all of that stuff. And you just need to get rid of that. I just bumped into a dad around the corner from me. New family moved in, really nice family. They're out here we have a swing in front of our house on the tree.
Give them a few days.
Their kids are on the swing every morning. It's the best thing to see. But I was talking to him, and he said that he moved. And I said, where'd you move from? He moved from a couple of towns over, another beach city. And he said that there were things that were going on there that he just couldn't stand. He goes, They forced all the kids to take a knee every time they blew a whistle. And he goes, what is that about? Why are you taking a knee? But what are you teaching these kids? Besides that, he goes, there was a lot of that other radical stuff. And this guy's a good, God-fearing Christian dude, beautiful wife, beautiful kids, little kids. He goes, I pulled them out. I'm homeschooling them. And we moved. That was it. And he's now our neighbor. So there are people that are having enough of this radicalization in the schools. And what you're seeing, and what a lot of parents need to do, is there are excellent homeschooling options, and there's also excellent private schooling options, and there are grants that you could get to help pay for that. So if your kids are in a school, and we talked about that on that chat group that we're on, where up in Palos Verdes there's crazy things going on. I'm like, pull your kids out. What are you still fighting with the school for? What you do is you pull your kids out. You no longer participate with that organization.
I agree with you 100%.
There are more schools closing down in California than anywhere else in the nation, and that is because the parents, the people who are, subject to feeling the wrath of these ridiculous school policies, they are fed up and they're pulling out. So that's what needs to be done. Defund the public education system and let everybody use these vouchers. You give people vouchers, and then if you want to go to a public school, you use their voucher to pay the public school. No more of my tax automatically goes to the public school when there's a perfectly great private school that I would rather send my kids to that's not going to indoctrinate them into chopping off their weenies, and it's going to teach them better math. My kid's in a super advanced accelerated math program. I love that. That's what I want. I just don't want all the other garbage.
By the way, you said indoctrination. I'm gonna just hammer this point home one more time. The comparison, Judah, it's a brilliant comparison, comparing the UNRWA Hamas classrooms to the kind of liberal U.S. classrooms, because it's all the same thing. If you are glorifying jihad, then basically you're saying, I want you to become this thing. And if you are promoting political violence, you are basically making that a righteous act. And so if those kids grow up, and I used to say this, I remember I was in the Army and there was a raid at one point and we found a textbook, and an UNRWA textbook. This is many, many years ago. And in the UNRWA textbook, there was an actual mock-up that they had made, it looked real, of a can of meat, like a Campbell's soup can. And on it, it said, basically in Hebrew, Palestinian baby meat, with a baby on the cover. And the text was that Jews who have sharpened teeth eat the meat of Palestinian babies. So this was part of their education. So if they thought that, and if they were taught that from birth, from the moment that they stepped into a classroom, every year until they were finally handed a gun and sent out to go kill people, why would it's like almost unfair that I could get mad at that kid. Of course, I will take out that kid trying to kill me or my family no matter what. But I understand at least why psychologically he was indoctrinated into it. Again, same thing. If it's all they hear over and over again, and we know the percentage of liberals teaching our children in U.S. classrooms is astronomically higher than conservatives, then how can we expect any other result?
And let's be honest, it's not just what they're learning in the classrooms, it's what they're learning at home. It's the parenting. I mean, you guys use both of your age demographic. The parents of your age demographic might be the worst parents of all time.
Well, I had a talk with my kid on the way to school this morning, 11-year-old. I said, do you know what happened to Charlie Kirk? And she said, yes. I said, do you know why they did that? And she said, no. I said, they did that because Charlie is willing to sit down and talk to anybody. He's willing to debate. And she goes, and they don't have anything to say, so they used a bullet. She got it. She understood it. We talk about this stuff. It's important because if you think, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, when we were kids, I don't want to date myself, parents sent their kids to school. And I see that a lot because my wife's parents are immigrants and she has hundreds of cousins and tons of kids. And the parents weren't that involved in the education process. They didn't even know what they were teaching the kids in school. Like, it was just, this is what we all do. And it was kind of a herd protection and a herd mentality where all the kids went to school together and all the kids got an education together. And everything was just, you trusted the system. And what's happened since then to now, and it's, it was a little bit back then, but we just thought there was a couple of crazy lefty college professors. But now it's all the way down to, pre-K. Qatar is investing in early child education in America to indoctrinate kids in pre-K, in when they're in kindergarten all the way up. It's not just the universities.
And though, but what I'm referring to though is also Golan is what he's talking about is so those parents that were extremely permissive that let the government educate their children, those children are now your age, and those parents are.
Well, what I'm saying is that it wasn't that pernicious back then. It wasn't that bad.
No. But what I'm
then.
saying though
But
is
now,
because
today,
those parents weren't parents.
right. So
You
they're
have-
just assuming the same thing, and they're sending their kids off in that trusted environment that they think is trusted. They think it's the same environment they grew up in, and it is not. It is
I'm saying it's
absolutely
even
not.
worse. What I'm saying is that those parents between the ages of 30 or 20 and 50 are a major part of the problem, because the lack of education that they got and the indoctrination even these parents have gotten online, and because of their social networks, they're okay with their children learning this in school. They're okay with this going on. They're the parents that are celebrating this.
I don't know. I don't know if all of them are. I think there's
Obviously,
some
it's
that
not.
are, and I think there's
Obviously, Mend, it's not everybody, but I'll use you as a perfect example of what you just said. You're always the exception to the rule. So take yourself out of the equation.
no, I got that.
And talk about the dad
Let me
that
just tell
had
you
to
something.
move out of his.
We had parent-teacher night at school the other night. I met the parent and met the teachers because it's back to school. So you go in and you meet all the teachers. You find out what they're teaching. And this one teacher talked about biology. She's like, oh, we do biology and a little bit of like procreation. And she goes, whoa, everybody slow down. Because nobody even said anything. She goes, I just want you to know this is PG. We're not getting into any of that stuff that would ruffle feathers. So that's the way it needs to be. You go to class, you go to these things, and you find out what they're teaching your kids. The teacher should be on the defensive. They should be defensive, saying, we're not going to do any of that crazy radical gender ideology stuff. That should be, and I was so glad that she did that from the jump.
But again, I keep on saying this, exception to the rule. And Golan, I just want to go to you because I know you're grasping more of what I'm saying, is that these parents, because they want to be in these social networks, they're the same parents that use pronouns, right? They're the same parents that believe in the BLM movement. These are the same parents that are allowing their children to be grown up into a world and culturing. And this was exactly what Charlie Kirk was fighting. He was fighting the indoctrination that was happening. And he was trying to show people through debate and discourse that there is another outlook on this life. And because they're not getting it from anywhere else, they're not getting it from social media, parents, education. That was something he realized, and he did what everybody tried to do for every Republican the Republicans were so lax on the education system. They just figured it would always be like it was, right? Once you turn, liberal at 20, conservative at 30. That stopped being the case. And Republicans just missed the ball. Charlie Kirk realized this. And it takes the brain to realize that this was missed. And this is what he was trying to do.
Look, I've got to say that some of that we can put it at their feet. We can say they're culpable for. Some parents, there's no question, especially on the Republican side of things, a lot of party of the parents got lazy and they ceded the single most important battleground that exists, which is education. Men pointed out that foreign bad actors have been infiltrating and paying to indoctrinate our kids for a very long time. And it was, again, as we talked about a lot, the frog in the water. We didn't realize it until suddenly all of our kids were trans. And so, on one hand, on the other hand, it's hard to blame them, because I'll use myself as an example. I went to school. My parents hardly knew what I was learning in school, but I know what I was learning. And in retrospect, it was normal. So how bad could it have been? Because school was normal because the teachers were normal. And, nobody was trying to indoctrinate anything when I was a kid, at least not in my school. So when I grow up and I become a parent, if I don't know better, I happen to, but many people don't do this for a living and aren't watching things with the eye that we are watching things with. So those parents are like, I remember that. It's school. What's the problem? I'll drop my kid off, and then later I'll be like, hey, at dinner, what'd you learn today? And the kid will go, nothing. What'd you do? Nothing. It's the same conversation every parent has. And you go, all right, kids learn the same thing I said to my parents, and they move on. So on one hand, I can't blame them. On the other hand, we know that they got lazy. When you look at what the left did in terms of taking over education, it's similar to what the Muslim Brotherhood did in terms of taking over America. Okay. They saw this is ground zero. This is where we can really make a change. So the left started seeding teachers' colleges, rewriting curricula, turning school boards into ideological outposts. And Republicans were focused on school choice and focused on other things, which are important, but they were so busy with trying to change things about the system or taking only their kid out and doing something else. So a lot of their kids are in special ed schools or have specialized programs. And they forgot that if the 90% that they didn't pull out are in these indoctrination camps, suddenly you have the equivalent of Gaza, where maybe there's 10%. I don't even know if that's true, but maybe there's 10% of people who are just innocent Gazans walking around, but 90% of them are all for jihad and can't wait to either go murder or celebrate murder. So you suddenly are in a place where you become the ideological, moral, ethical minority. And I think this is something that little by little we've realized, unfortunately, it was when everything blew up in our faces. And so now, especially with something like what just happened with Charlie, especially now that the news is at least speculating that it is a college age killer, this is now saying to everybody, oh my God, an entire generation has basically been destroyed or has been ideologically aligned with crazy thinking. Now we have to do something about it, but we're starting behind the 8 ball, and it's going to be far more difficult because the pendulum has swung so far.
Let me just shift of how I was trying to say this a little bit. You guys are close to 50. How many and how many people? Mend often takes his kids to synagogue on a Friday night or on the high holy days. I know you celebrate in your own way and your own traditions. How many people our age do you think are doing that? How many people
Church or synagogue is very
going
low.
to
I
church
mean,
or
it's coming back.
synagogue?
Much lower.
That was one of the things that Charlie actually was also
Right, but
instrumental.
that's my point with parenting. And how many of those parents are still, you bring up our day, most of our parents were still married. How many parents aren't married anymore? How many parents are making everything extremely permissible for their children, where everything is okay? And no, everything is not okay. I go back to the pronouns. I go back to BLM. I go back to every single one of these things. It's like, be a parent.
But they're interconnected. You know, I was talking to a parent, a friend of ours, and we were talking about her and her kids. And I was like, why don't you bring your kids to our jujitsu studio and get them? It will be so great for them. Their self-esteem will go up. They'll get in shape. There's just countless
discipline, understanding how to take
all
orders,
all of it, orders,
Yeah.
exactly, and how to be physical without emotional. That was another big one. You know, every time we were physical as kids, when we were fighting, we were full of rage and emotion. These kids are doing it cool, calm, and collected, and they throw down, they do amazing, and at the end they get up, they shake hands, and they're still best friends. So it's really, really good. And the thing she said back to me, like, just hit home. She goes, my kids don't want to, and I don't want them to hate me. Like, as a parent,
That's my point.
Well, that's not a
Yes,
parent.
exactly.
That's
That's
not
what
a
I'm saying.
parent. I'm sorry to say, that's not a parent. That's a
but
friend.
that's
Today, parents have ceded the concept of being a parent,
Yes.
and they are now
And
friends.
that's my point.
I'm
That's
strengthening your
exactly-
point, genius. I am strengthening
agree
your
with
point.
you,
I am
my
with you.
friend.
And I'm
Yes.
just actually, and then to contrast that, I bumped into another neighbor. We walk the
You have
dog
a lot
every
of
night.
neighbors that you
I have
talk
a lot
to.
of
I try
neighbors.
to
You know,
avoid
we-
everybody I see.
No, we chit chat with everybody. So I talked to another neighbor, and we were talking about his kids. They're off in college, just going back through the things. And he was like, listen, I tell this to my kids, and I've done this again and again. His kids are really, really successful right now. Some of them are in college, and some of them got jobs, and they're kicking ass. And he's like, it is not my job to be your friend. It is my job to be your parent. And I'm going to make you do things, and I'm going to tell you things that you're going to think you know better, but you don't. At this point in your life, you think you do, your brain is not fully developed, and you're going to have to trust me. And he doesn't give them an option. Back to my friend who didn't want her kids to hate her. I'm like, that is so cliche, the trap that divorced parents fall into. And that's why their kids grow up being, you know, absolute misfits. And if you take that a step farther, where there's an absent father, like in a lot of the Black homes, unfortunately, then it takes it even worse, where the kid is not just not being disciplined by a parent, but they are running rampant. They're doing whatever they want. There's no male authority. You know, I think it was Abigail Schreier had this study done. A single parent home, the kid is like something like 50% more likely to wind up in jail or something. Single mom, if it's just the single mom, it's about, I think, 60%. And if it's a single dad, it drops to about 20%. And the case she was making, which is counterintuitive, is that having a dad in the home is more important than having a mom. And I couldn't believe that, because everything I believed was the mom gives you the nurture, the love, and the dad is the discipline, right? It's like, that's just this stereotypical setup of the way we understand these relationships. And what she was saying is that the data tells us different. The data tells us that kids need discipline more than they need that nurturing. They need the discipline. And it is your job as a parent to teach your kids where those boundaries are so that they learn and become good, well functioning adults. Without it, they're missing those guardrails.
You know, I want to bring up something, because you're talking about how important discipline is. I have often spoken about, and will specifically understand this because he's also been in the military. I think church is incredibly important. Judy, you heard me speak about this. I don't care what Judeo-Christian religion you are. I think that having faith in your home just makes you a more moral person. I think it just simply does. And I would say the same thing when it comes to martial arts. I'm in the same boat as men. I make sure my kids have these practices. But I have long said that, much like Israel, I think everybody should have to do military service. And I don't mean necessarily going to a war zone for years at a time, even if it was 6 months of basic training.
Like RTC or
Like,
whatever.
but I don't mean you go home at the end of the day. I mean, you go to the army. And I have a whole thing that I put together because I thought this is the way you save the way the country is going. I was thinking about America. Learn, just like we were talking about martial arts, you learn discipline, you learn teamwork, you learn respect, you learn resilience, you learn hierarchy, you learn how to take orders, you learn how to make sure things are on time, responsibility, all of that. And it's not about turning people into soldiers. It's about turning people into citizens. Because if you understand service, and I don't mean military service, I mean the kind of larger flashing light concept of the word service, then that means you understand what it feels like to put the group ahead of yourself, even for a moment. And imagine, just for a second, in America, if every single, let's say, 18-year-old, like in Israel, red state, blue state, rich kid, poor kid, it doesn't matter, all of them, all spent 6 months sweating in the same dirt, running the same drills, eating the same food, living together, surviving together. Do you think the country would still be as divided as it is today?
No, you're
I
right.
don't think so.
You're absolutely right.
I think that's a great point. I just want to move on just a little bit because it's this, and I want to get back to this pre-Trump, post-Trump, because I had written an article about this years ago about Trump, where he was the first president in quite a while to be a father figure type of president. Right? Where he was going to tell people what they didn't want to hear. And that is what America needs. America does not need a friend in chief. They need a president and chief. And there is a big difference. Obama was supposedly your friend. Look what that friend got us. Look where that friend brought us to. And then you juxtapose that to Trump, who is more of an authoritarian. And I think it's extremely, and that it goes again to one of those things that people were not used to having again. People were not used to having somebody. So what did they call him? A Nazi and a fascist.
You know, here's the bottom line. Yeah, sure. We need someone who actually makes decisions. And that goes back to when Trump met up with NATO and all the NATO members came back and they said, oh, daddy's back. Daddy's back is how they referred to Trump. Finally, we have a leader who's willing.
That's exactly my point.
Yeah, I get you. And we have a leader who's willing to make decisions and take action and not just spread platitudes on everybody. You know, you ever get one of those calls from the Indian call center and it's full of platitudes. How's your day? How are you? Oh, thank you. I'm like, just get me my data. Tell me what I want, what I called about. You know, I'm calling to find out why my credit card got declined and you're giving me all these platitudes. I don't want that.
I talk about this, by the way, with AI all the time. Every time I ask a question on AI, it's like, what an interesting question. Great point. I'm just like,
yeah.
Just give my answer. Shut up.
The platitudes.
Yeah.
So the same thing with the previous administration and the Obama administration. Obama was like, you know, just bending over backwards to all of America's enemies, you know, giving money to the Iranians and all that stuff. And same thing with Biden. Finally, we have somebody back in charge who's willing to make real decisions for the country based on the best for the country. And whether you like what he says at night at 3 a.m. on Twitter or not, the guy makes great decisions or great points for our country. I don't care about all of his other stuff. It's like, we talked about the doctor are you going to go to the best doctor? Or you're going to go to the doctor who aligns with your political beliefs. I don't care about the political beliefs. I want the best guy who does whatever that is. So yeah, thank God we got Trump back in office. But, back to what we said before, they need to ramp up that Justice Department to go after everyone and clean house. Because if they don't clean house,
I was about to say this, man. I couldn't agree with you more. Having a father figure that tells you what you did wrong, but then there's no consequences, doesn't fix the problem.
Listen, to close up shop, it's September 11th, and I really do think Trump. I just want to get one more thing about Charlie Kirk. I do believe he was the MLK of our time, and I don't think it's just
said those words in the car. I was listening to a U2 song today. They were talking about the assassination in Memphis and how the voice was amplified. The song I'm talking about, and I paused it and I said to my wife, that's almost exactly the language that my friends and I have been texting about Charlie Kirk.
And I do think that Trump not just giving him the Medal of Freedom, September 10th should be Charlie Kirk Day.
I agree with that. I think there should be a giant monument built to Charlie Kirk in Washington, and it should be called The American. He exemplified what it was to be an American.
Yeah,
Before we sign off, I do want to mention one thing. There was a incident that took place in Queens. Have you guys heard about any of this? Where an elderly couple was tortured to death?
Yes.
Yes,
by the black. I thought we brought that up yesterday.
We brought it up. We did bring it up yesterday, but very briefly. Yeah.
Most, I was talking to some friends about this. Most of the people had no idea what I was talking about. So this couple in their 70s, 76-year-old Maureen Alton and 77-year-old Frank and Maureen Alton, this man came to their house and saying that he needed to charge his cell phone. Did they have a phone charger? Apparently he was walking around the neighborhood doing this. This old couple in their 70s let him in. He then proceeded to torture them for 5 hours straight, tied them to a pole, and then lit the house on fire. And the way they caught him was because he was using their credit cards. Now, I'm not just talking about this story. Of course, it's a white couple and a black man. That's just too often the way it goes these days. But what's more important is that there's almost no awareness, almost no press coverage of this story. This story, just like the girl slashed on the train, slit her throat, the Ukrainian girl, and the girl in LA who had her throat slashed, another girl nobody probably knows about, same thing. They don't get.
That was you. You posted it online. Was that you posted on an X the amount of times it was written about the gangbanger, and then juxtaposed that to
he mentioned it on the show as well.
Yep. It just doesn't get out there. So it's worth, we're going to give that Maureen and Frank their exposure. We need more.
I agree with you. It's a brilliant point. I agree with you 100%. But again, Golan, I want to get back to this because it's 9/11. It's September 11th. And
we remember. Oh, and what you were talking about earlier with they should be teaching about 9/11 in schools. And you were like, talk about the people that died and talk about the people that did it. You need to talk about the people that did it. There is a great jihad being waged against the West, and the liberals don't want to admit it, but it is there. It is active. Unfortunately, our government still hasn't cracked down on Qatar, which is the prime funder for this jihad against the West.
No, it's a great point. And go on. I just want to get back. We need to make September 10th and September 11th combined. Obviously, very different. Well, I don't know how different they actually are.
Separate holidays.
Separate holidays, and we can't just let and I remember like George Bush saying, you got to go on his business, however he said it, to paraphrase, go on his business as usual. The world lived without us for 1,000,000 years. When I got sober, this guy I knew, he called me up and he's like, hey, let's go do something. And I was like, no, I got to work. I got to do it. And he's like, the world lived without you for 23 years. It could live without you for a couple of hours. We're not that important sometimes. It's okay to shut down a place of employment or something like that. Listen, you go to New Jersey and they still have the blue laws, part of New Jersey where my parents are, right? On a Sunday, you cannot find a store that's open. And you're there and you're like, what the hell is going on? But as I look at it now, I'm like, it's sometimes it's good to uphold tradition.
It's another reason. Can I
go back? I mentioned sitting Shiva, right? That's what we do immediately following a tragedy. But there's a second thing, and I think it's equally important. It's the anniversary of a death or a tragedy. This is called a yurtzeit. A yurtzeit is, again, coming directly from zeit, which is time, and yor, which is year, so it's a year's time. Every once a year, it's observed on the anniversary of the person's passing or the anniversary of whatever that tragedy is. You light a candle, and the candle, the yurtzeit candle, burns for 24 hours. Okay, and we go through all sorts of other stuff. But I always found that interesting. It's these thick. I thought I had one in my office. I would show the group, but I don't. It's in the living room. But it's this thick candle. It's like this big ball of a candle, and it just burns straight through for 24 hours. This is sundown to sundown. That's how we do it. And the idea of that 24-hour candle is it ties to the memory of the loved one, and it ties that to the wholeness of creation's rhythm. That's the idea behind it. The soul of man is the lamp of God, is what it says in Proverbs 20:27. I'm getting emotional. Sorry. Because I'm thinking about the idea that the body is gone, but there's an enduring presence of the soul. And we do a continuous remembrance because it doesn't pause, just like an eternal flame. The memory doesn't flicker out. And the intensity of that morning lasts for an entire day because it allows us connection. If we are going to truly remember 9/11 or truly remember Charlie Kirk or whatever it happens to be, then we have to do something more than what we're doing, because 9/11 online has become punchline. Many of the kids in the generation that should know what that is have no idea what it is, and those that do don't take it seriously. They certainly don't know who did it, and they certainly don't know what led to it. And because of the indoctrination in the classroom, they're being lied to about it, and it's being glossed over. And to your point, the idea of having that sacred time, we block out a period of time to study this. Like you said, you know what? We can learn more math tomorrow. Today is a day that we have to remember, because we remember to ensure that never again, it doesn't occur again.
We know most kids aren't learning math anyways, or how to read. So you might as well put this imprint on them. And I got to tell you, there's a lot of people, and I got to say, especially in the Black community, that are mourning for Charlie Kirk. I mean, you have people like Lamar Jackson. Just I don't know, I'm not going to name all of them, but you see tons of these videos because Charlie was a God-fearing person. And in the Black community, especially in America, that's one thing they share with the evangelicals and the Christians is their love of God.
And the Jewish community is mourning Charlie Kirk. My father
100%.
called me from Israel today,
Yeah.
simply to tell me how crushed he was.
Yeah, without a doubt, anybody that believes in a higher power or God, this is a traumatic gut punch.
It's anyone who believes
And
in America. I mean,
yeah,
he was the American ideal.
well, you know what the reality is now? People that believe in God, that believe in America. For the most part, people that don't believe in God don't believe in America. And I think we can separate at this point.
Well, that's the nexus of the radical left, so the queers for Palestine, when Palestine would kill the queers. So, like, what do they have in common with these groups? And the commonality is they both hate America. So for right now, their job is aligned, the enemy of my enemy type thing. So they pair up, bring down America. Right after that, they'll chop off all the queers' heads. But right now, use the useful idiots. So yes, you're right. Godless society.
And listen, I got to be honest. We're closing up shop. I've always hated September 11th, especially being in New York. And if you were in New York at that time or in Brooklyn, you had burning paper. But you had ash landing in your backyard. And
I lived right there. I lived on West Broadway. I
Yeah.
was a few blocks away from the towers.
And I think it's
I had a
important.
meeting that morning, was supposed to occur in Building 6 of the World Trade Center that morning.
Crazy.
I may have told you that story before. I was directly connected to it because I'd been former military. I went down with a fireman friend of mine, and we helped dig through rubble.
Yeah, and my friend Big Judah always thanks me because I wanted to go to synagogue that morning because and I never go to synagogue ever. But because of somebody in my family's health, I really wanted to go. And he always credits me with, driving into the city late that morning. And I literally never go. I mean, not because I'm anti-synagogue. It was one of those, it was a weekday. And I just wanted to put on my fill in and pray. And I remember his voice when I asked him. He's like, "Really? I have to go out of my way to come and get you so I could take you to synagogue?" And afterwards, he's like, "Oh my God, thank you so much for calling me." And I want to thank again all those first responders. There should always be at this time of the year. Every single one of them should have that yahrzeit candle, that candle that burns for them for 24 hours. Every single one of those first responders and the people that died that day should have that candle. And to the families, to the people, it's such a travesty. It's such a horrific day in our history. It should be treated like a horrific day in our history, not just an other day where it's business as usual. It shouldn't be just we're going to the memorial. It should be the whole day should be a memorial. And I for the life of me cannot grasp this concept of why it's not and why. So I beg of President Trump to name September 10th Charlie Kirk Day, and as men brought up, making a statue in Washington of him, a monstrous statue all across America, where he symbolized and just say America. And I believe September 11th should be a national holiday. Both those days should be national holidays. And it's the least we could do. I mean, it's the least we could do. Think about like the least we could do go on for people that died for us, that died for freedom, that died to save lives. If we can't give up 24 hours of our time and celebrate them, what the hell have we become? What do we stand for at that point?
I couldn't agree more. There's very little to say other than to say you're absolutely right. And I think it might be time for us all to look in the mirror and recognize that the humility that it takes to say that I'm not more important in this moment than knowing my history, than remembering someone. Sit down for a minute, burn a candle, read a name, let it sear into your memory. That's how you make sure the bastards don't win.
That's exactly right. Juan Williams, who I often disagree with and often can't stand, used to talk about going to Charles Krauthammer's house on July 4th, the late and great Charles Krauthammer. So he used to make people read out of the Constitution at his July 4th parties. And Juan Williams would just share the love of that. And I thought, oh my God, that is such a cool thing. And I think, man, like you're a family guy. Obviously you are too, Golan, and I know you both do fireworks. That's just such an interesting start. Even if we just started with the basics, July 4th, read the Constitution.
Actually, have my kids taking the class at Hillsdale on the Constitution.
That's incredible. And again, I want to say it's to everybody out there and everybody's struggling because everybody was in shock. There was no violence last night, and that's what separates us. And like the rabbi brought up, people were going to church. The pastor on Fox News talked about his church having 3,500 people at mass that night. You looked at Liberty University, where everybody was praying. This is what we do. We don't do what they do, and we can't be silent anymore. The silent majority can no longer be silent. I'm tired of that word. We just have to be the majority. And the only way we can keep on being the majority is if we are no longer silent, because our voices are better, our thoughts are better. And I don't mean better in the sense like of bravado. They're just throughout time, believing in God, believing in country, believing in spirituality is better belief than the opposition. But I want to thank you guys both. Missed you men yesterday. People, take all the time you need and don't doom scroll, as we brought up yesterday. Don't go on X or don't go on and read conspiracy theories or on one side or this or that on the other. Just don't do it. And if you're going to do anything, look at a highlight clip of Charlie Kirk. I promise you that would take 24 hours at least to look at every Instagram post he has put up from the college campuses he did. That could be the best thing in the world you could do to celebrate his memory and try to do the same thing. Our prayers are with everybody. Our prayers with America. Our prayers are with the families that lost loved ones on 9/11, everybody that struggled and suffered through 9/11. And our prayers are with Charlie Kirk's family and everybody that knew him, and everybody knew him. That's the thing about Charlie Kirk. Everybody knew him. You know, you couldn't go online without not knowing him. And that's what's so offensive about this whole thing. We all saw somebody that never cursed, never did anything other than try to have a discussion and have a debate. That's why this is such a hurtful thing for so many people, because we all knew him. May his memory be a blessing, I should say.
Absolutely. I think in this case, it's truer than for most.
Yes. And we know we went on super long today, but you have to talk this out. I want to thank everybody for following us. Obviously, thedailycheatsheet.com. I want to thank everybody that follows us. And from the bottom of our hearts, I want to wish everybody truly A good morning, afternoon, and night world wherever you are. God bless you all.